actually make the top 10 right now. So before the season began on ESPN.com, they listed the top 75 players, and he was 16th. We just moved him up to 12 by putting him past Moses, Dr. J, Hakeem, and Durant. Again, Durant's story has not been written, but as of this moment, we put Steph ahead of him. Here's the problem. We need to find 2 more to put him ahead of, out of this list. Shaq, Kobe, Oscar, Duncan, Bird, Russell, Wilt, Magic, Kareem, LeBron, and Michael. Nuno, are you comfortable putting him ahead of 2 people on that list, and if so, which 2?
So I think part of the issue is, like, I haven't seen a lot of those guys, but I know, like, the easy default one has been, oh, put him ahead of Tim Duncan. Like, no, like, you're not putting him ahead of Tim Duncan. And I think Tim might even be too low on that list based upon everything that he's accomplished. So I don't think I'm able to put him in ahead of 2 of those guys on that list right now.
Okay. Hembo, are you, and you, of course, always approach things from an analytics and stats standpoint, are you prepared to put him ahead of 2 people?
I am. I would start with Oscar Robertson. Oscar Robertson, who statistically is inarguably one of the 10 greatest players ever. But Oscar Robertson didn't do hardly any high-level winning until later in his career, once he teamed up with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Steph has done much more of that than he has, so I'd put him ahead of Oscar for sure. I think there are a handful of other guys for whom you could make a credible argument. I think Steph is already a greater player than Shaq ever was, and I do think, especially by the time he is done, that will be exceedingly clear. And when you look at both Shaq and Kobe, having won those 3 championships together, I think Steph's championship in 2015 and Steph's championship this year is more impactful than any of those 3 that those guys won together, because Steph was the best player on both of those teams, not to mention the fact that, like I said before, he changed the game, and his impact thus on high-level winning, I think, was greater than either player. It's just hard. The reason this is hard for people is because Steph has done it in a non-traditional way, in a way in which it doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right. We're not used to seeing this kind of thing before. I think 20 years from now, we'll look back with an even greater appreciation for what Steph did, because that's what the league will look like collectively across the board.
So Zach Lowe was the first person I heard say this, and he said it to me and Mike, on Mike and Mike. When Steph first started becoming Steph, he said, this guy has the same but opposite impact on defenses that Shaq did, which is to say, Shaq made defenses collapse on him in such a way that they broke. You couldn't guard everything else on the floor because you needed to expend so much of your resources, energy, whatever phrase you want to use for it, on where he was. He broke them by making them so small. And Steph Curry did the exact opposite. He stretched them out with his range to a point where they became like a rubber band, and you can only pull it so far before it snaps. And that rubber band, that defense has snapped and broken in the same. It's sort of, for every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. Shaq and Steph Curry are equal opposite forces on the floor. And Zach Lowe said that on Mike and Mike, and I brought it up to Shaq when Shaq came on with us, and Shaq agreed. He liked that analogy. Here's the problem I have with Oscar. My father, and yesterday, Father's Day, when for any of us who've lost our dads, is always a sort of a day of some mixed emotion. My father is where I got all of my sports knowledge and passion from. My father is screaming at you right now from wherever he is, saying, if you don't think Oscar Robertson is one of the greatest players of all time, you have no idea what you're talking about. I could never bring up Michael's greatness without my father saying, you cannot say he's better than Oscar. You just can't say it. Because my dad was a child of the 50s and the 60s, and you and I are not. I didn't see Oscar Robertson play, so I don't really have that perspective. Here's what I will say. Shaq was the star. Shaq was the central focus of 3 of those 5 Laker championships, and Dwayne Wade was the focus of the one in Miami. Kobe was the focus of the 2 championships he won post-Shaq in LA. Somewhere in all of this has to go into the equation, which guy would you take on your team if you're starting one, right? If you're starting a team and you could have one of these 2 guys, which one are you taking? I don't know where to put that in this equation. But there's no way in hell I'm taking Steph Curry over Kobe.
Why not?
Because
Why
Kobe
not?
Bryant, basketball is played on both ends of the floor, first of all. Kobe Bryant was one of the great defenders of all time. Kobe Bryant, I just having watched his entire career, if you told me I could have a team and I could start it with either that guy or that guy, which one are you taking? I'm starting it with Kobe.
Are you missing all those Kobe years in between those championships where he was the guy and they stunk?
There weren't that
happened?
many years. I mean, Steph Curry, I get that he was hurt, but Steph Curry just went 15-50, we just said 2 years ago. Now, he was injured for a lot of that, and that team was decimated by injury. But historically speaking, teams don't lose guys like Shaq and rebound to win championships that fast. They did because of Kobe. Steph just did the same thing. Just did the same thing. They rebounded from all the injury. In his case, they got all the same guys back, and they won. The worst part about these arguments is that you have to, on some level, diminish one to elevate the other. I don't want to diminish Steph Curry. It's the last thing on earth I want to do. But I'm not putting him ahead of Kobe. I'm just not. Now, if he wins another championship, maybe we'll have that kind. There's no way I'm putting him ahead of Kobe. I will hear you on Shaq. I will hear you on putting him ahead of Shaq. And I will hear you on putting him ahead of Oscar because I just don't have the perspective. Every other player, well, I don't have the perspective on Russell or Wilt either. But Wilt basically has his own record book, and Russell won the championship every single year. So I don't need to have seen their careers to know that. And Michael, Magic, LeBron, that's not even worth talking about. So those are the names that are up for debate here. Oscar, Shaq, Duncan, as Nuno just said, and maybe Bird. Having watched Bird's entire career, I mean, I hated Larry Bird like I've never hated anything in my entire life in the way that you hate athletes. That is a sports comment. It is not meant in any other way. Every time I've met Larry Bird, A, he's been very friendly, and B, I was awestruck when I met him the first time. But as a kid growing up as a Knick fan, oh my goodness, you didn't hate anybody like you hated that guy. But anyway, that's not the point. It's very difficult for me to say Steph Curry is a greater player historically than Larry Bird, but it deserves having a